The calm before the truth. The boy was screaming, not crying, not whining. Screaming like something inside him had snapped, like the whole world had suddenly gone too loud, too bright, too wrong. Passengers turned their heads in frustration. The woman beside them muttered something about brats and rich parents, but Ethan Hale didn't hear any of. Ith was kneeling beside his 7-year-old son, Theo, who had curled into the footwell of first-class seat 1A. His hands were over his ears, his eyes squeezed shut as if trying to disappear inside himself. Tears streamed down his flushed cheeks. And Athena, man who could negotiate billion-dollar mergers with cold precision, was helpless. He whispered his son's name again and again, tried holding his shoulder, tried reaching him, but it was no use. This wasn't a tantrum, it was a storm, and Ethan didn't know how to stop it then. Without a word, a flight attendant knelt down across from them. She didn't ask questions, didn't speak at all, just slowly reached out her hand and placed a small rubber dinosaur in front of Theo. A bright green T-Rex, worn, loved, and somehow familiar. Theo blinked just once. His breathing stuttered, his scream turned into a hiccup, then a sob, then silence. The girl smiled softly and said in the gentlest voice, "Hey buddy, I think you dropped this last time." Ethan stared at her. He didn't know her, didn't remember seeing her before, and yet his son, who barely let therapists touch him, had stopped crying in her presence. He was now clinging to the little toy and looking up at her like she was some kind of angel. How did you know his name?" Ethan asked quietly. She looked at him with eyes that held something, a sadness maybe, or history, and said, "Only we've met before." Then she stood up, smoothed her skirt, and walked briskly down the aisle, as if nothing had happened, leaving Ethan frozen, staring after her. Passengers returned to their devices. The moment passed, but inside Ethan something had shifted. He reached for the call button, then hesitated instead. He pulled out his phone and typed a quick note to himself, "Find out who she is," because something didn't sit right. He knew every employee who worked with his family, every therapist, every aide, every substitute teacher, but not her, not this calm, clear-eyed woman who'd just dismantled his son's panic attack in 10 seconds. The plane landed 2 hours later in Seattle, and by then, Ethan had watched the woman closely every chance he got. She moved with quiet precision, never flustered. She helped a sick child in row 12 clean up quietly while the mother cried in gratitude. She offered extra snacks to an elderly couple arguing over a crossword. She never stopped moving. Not once did she look back at him after landing. Ethan tried to follow her, but she disappeared behind a security door marked staff only. He turned to the gate agent, flashing his platinum badge. "That attendant, the one with the braid, what's her name?" The agent frowned. "There were 3 on your flight, sir. The one who helped my son." Dark hair braid down her back, green eyes. He paused. She gave him a toy dinosaur. The agent typed something into the terminal, then looked up with a strange expression. "Sir, there's no one matching that description on the crew list." "What?" Ethan leaned forward. "That can't be right. I saw her. She helped my son." The agent checked again. "I'm sorry, sir, but the only female attendants today were Olivia, Maria, and Paige. None of them have dark hair or green eyes." Ethan's jaw tightened. "This doesn't make sense. She said she'd met my son before. Maybe she meant in passing." "No, my son has issues. He doesn't calm down for strangers." The agent shook his head. "Maybe she's from another flight. You could try contacting the airline." Ethan didn't reply. He turned away and walked through the gate, with Theo gripping his hand, but his mind was racing. He didn't believe in coincidences. And that woman, whoever she was, knew something about his son that even he didn't understand. That night in the hotel suite, Theo fell asleep, curled up with the rubber dinosaur. Ethan sat in the living room alone, laptop open, searching flight crew databases, security rosters, old emails. At midnight, he paused on a blurry photo from 2 years ago, a birthday party. Theo, with frosting on his face, and just at the edge of the frame, a young woman, dark braid, green eyes, smiling at him like she knew a secret. Ethan zoomed in, heart pounding. The photo was taken at a therapy retreat he'd sent Theo to with his late wife's approval. He hadn't gone business trip. He opened the folder. From that month, nothing, no names, no staff list. His phone, Buzzday, blocked. Number. He hesitated, then answered, a woman's voice, calm, steady. "Stop digging, Mr. Hale. You're not ready for the truth." Then silence. He stood up so fast his chair fell back. "Hello, who is this?" But the call had ended. He looked over at his son, sleeping peacefully, breathing softly, and Ethan knew whatever this was, it wasn't over, not by a long shot. He whispered under his breath, "I'm going to find you, and I'm going to find out what you did to my son." Outside, a security camera blinked red, recording the night, recording everything: the woman behind the smile, the morning sunlight spilled through the hotel window and bathed the room in gold. Ethan Hale stood by the glass, holding a lukewarm coffee and staring at the city's skyline. He hadn't slept, not after that call, not after hearing that voice tell him to stop digging. Instinct screamed louder than ever. Someone knew something about Theo, about that retreat, about his wife's final months before she passed. And that someone had walked straight into his life on a plane, pretending to be a flight attendant. Theo padded into the room, rubbing his eyes, holding the green dinosaur close. "Dad, is she coming back?" Ethan turned. "Who?" "The nice lady with the dinosaur." Ethan knelt beside him. "Do you remember her name?" Theo shook his head. "But she smells like the pink soap Mommy used to keep in her purse." The air in the room shifted. Ethan froze. That soap was discontinued 3 years ago. Only his wife used it. No one else could have known that smell. His heart thudded. "Buddy, did she ever talk to you before? Maybe at the camp? Or anywhere else?" Theo nodded slowly. "She gave me juice when I cried. And she said, Mommy said I was brave." That hit Ethan like a punch, because after his wife passed from cancer nearly a year ago, no one had used those words since she used to whisper them during the worst nights, when Theo couldn't breathe through his panic-a-thon. Picked up the phone and called his assistant. "Michelle, I need you to pull everything from the August 2023 records, staff lists for the Bright Horizon Kids Retreat, emails, photos, anything on it now, sir." "Is this about the security breach last night?" Ethan's grip tightened. "What breach?" "There was an alert triggered on your hotel room door. Around 3:12 a.m. someone tried to bypass the lock but failed. Security says it could be a glitch." He didn't believe in glitches. "Double security and tell them to keep my room under surveillance. Don't let anyone in without my clearance." "Yes, sir." He hung up and looked down at his son. "Come on, we're checking out early." He wasn't about to wait around to see who tried to visit him at 3 noon. He was in his Seattle office. Theo was in the next room with a caregiver. Ethan stared at the glowing screen where names rolled by from Michelle's research. Then he saw it named Delilah Voss, role volunteer support staff, Bright Horizon Retreat, August 2023. There was no last known address, no contact number, but there was a photo file labeled Campfire Night. He clicked Attend. There she was, same woman, same braid, same smile, kneeling beside a group of kids under string lights, her hand resting protectively on Theo's shoulder. Ethan leaned forward, his chest tightening. How had she gone from being a volunteer at a children's retreat to impersonating a flight attendant a year later? Or had she never left? He opened the staff registry. Her name wasn't on the official payroll. She was listed as external support, with a temporary badge ID. So who sent her? The door to his office creaked open. Michelle stepped in, holding a thin envelope. "This was delivered by courier 5 minutes ago. No return address." Ethan opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper typed, "If you want to know the truth, come to Pier 19 at 11:45, tonight alone, or your son suffers." He read it twice, then folded it slowly. "Michelle, clear my schedule for tonight, sir." "Is this a threat?" "No," he said quietly. "It's an invitation." That night the fog hung low across the water. Pier 19 was quiet. Cargo ships floated in the distance, and a lone lamp cast a dull yellow glow over the dock. Ethan stood with his coat collar up, hands in his pockets, and a burner phone tucked inside. He wasn't stupid. He'd brought 2 of his own security detail who waited a block away in an unmarked van. Footsteps echoed. Then she emerged from the mist. Some braid, same steady green eyes, but this time no uniform, no smile. "Thank you for coming alone," she said. Her voice was calm, but he saw something trembling beneath it. Fear maybe, or resolve. "You have 60 seconds to explain who you are and what you did to my son," he said, his voice sharp. Delilah didn't flinch. "I didn't do anything to your son, Ethan. I protected him twice from what." She stepped closer. "From your wife." The words hit like shrapnel. He took a step back. "What the hell are you talking about?" Delilah took a breath. "Your wife wasn't the woman you think she was at the retreat. She should try to hurt Theo. She drugged his juice. He was barely conscious when I found him crying in the woods that night." "That's a lie." "No, it's not. The staff covered it up because she was rich, because they didn't want the retreat's funding to vanish." "You're insane," Ethan growled, but doubt crawled up his spine. Delilah continued, she said. He reminded her of her pain, that she couldn't love him and watch herself die at the same time. Ethan clenched his fists. He remembered the quiet arguments, the days his wife refused to touch Theo. He thought it was grief, He thought it was illness. Delilah reached into her coat and handed him a flash drive. Everything's on here: video, medical logs, staff statements they tried to erase. He stared at it but didn't move. Why now? He asked. Why? Show yourself now. She looked at him and for the first time her voice cracked. Because you're the only person who can make it right, because Theo is still in danger from people who don't want the truth to come out, and I cared about him more than I was allowed to. Ethan's mind spun. This wasn't a business problem he could fix with money. This was a life unraveled, a truth hidden behind grief and silence. He took the drive. What do they want from my son now? Delilah's eyes darkened. Not him. You. A sharp sound cracked through the air. Gunshot. Delilah stumbled, blood blooming at her side. Ethan dove forward, catching her as she fell. A black car sped away down the pier. His security team came running seconds too late. Stay with me, he shouted. Delilah coughed, her lips red. Promise me. Protect him. Don't trust the Foundation. Then her eyes rolled back and Ethan screamed for help as the fog swallowed the night. The flash drive files, the emergency room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Ethan sat with blood on his shirt and Delilah's purse in his lap. A doctor had taken her into surgery half an hour ago. The bullet had missed her heart by inches, but she'd lost a lot of blood. He kept replaying her last words in his head. Don't trust the Foundation. He didn't even know what that meant. He'd donated to dozens of children's foundations over the years, but there was only one linked directly to the Bright Horizon retreat, the Margot Hale Recovery Foundation, named after his late wife. He gritted his teeth, couldn't even speak her name now without hearing Delilah's voice. She tried to hurt Theo. No, it couldn't be. Margot had loved Theo, hadn't she? A nurse touched his arm. Sir, she's stable, but she's unconscious and heavily sedated. Will she wake up? We're hopeful. He nodded. Thank you. Once alone, he pulled the flash drive from his coat pocket. His hands trembled slightly as he plugged it into his laptop. It opened instantly. No password, no encryptions, just 3 folders, 1 video. Evidence 2, staff confessions 3, Foundation files. He opened the first folder, clicked on the video file labeled Campfire Night, 2023. The screen lit up with shaky footage, children singing by a fire, laughter echoing. Then the camera shifted, moved through the trees, and suddenly it captured something Ethan wasn't ready to see. Margot, his wife, leaning over Theo's small body, whispering something too low to hear. She held a thermos, unscrewed it, poured it into a juice box, and forced it into his hands. Theo's face crumpled. He whimpered. She slapped his hand lightly. The camera zoomed her words, now audible. Be good, or Daddy will leave you too. Ethan's breath caught. His chest tightened. He slammed the lid of the laptop shut, his hand shaking. He couldn't deny it, couldn't rationalize. Ethan just seen proof that the woman he'd loved, the mother of his child, had done the unthinkably and worse. She'd done it while smiling, while pretending everything was fine. Ethan stood abruptly. The nurse turned, but he waved her off. He needed air. The night air hit him like a slap. He leaned against the concrete wall of the hospital and stared up at the dark sky. His mind was a hurricane. The lies, the Foundation. Delilah Shea had saved Theo. She had taken a bullet to deliver this truth, and someone had tried to silence her. For I've reopened the flash drive, this time choosing folder 2, staff confessions. There were 6 documents, all digitally signed, all timestamped. Within days of the retreat ending, they told the same story from different angles. Had become emotionally unstable during her final months, obsessed with controlling Theo's behavior. She believed he was a reflection of her pain. She called him the Shadow and told counselors he didn't deserve to remember her fondly. One entry stood out from a junior therapist named Haley. Margot made us swear not to tell Ethan. She said she'd shut the entire retreat down if we tried. We didn't think she'd actually hurt him until the campfire night. Another document detailed how Delilah had reported the incident, how she'd been dismissed, quietly paid off to disappear, but she hadn't taken the money. She'd taken the memory, the guilt, and waited until Ethan could hear the truth. The third folder, Foundation files, was a rabbit hole: bank transfers, offshore accounts, shell charities. The Margot Hale Recovery Foundation had been laundering donations, millions. Ethan had unknowingly signed off on fake grants. Money had flowed from his company's charitable arm into hands he didn't recognize. Names like Dr. C. Vernon M. Larry kept appearing. No employee records, no photos, just aliases on. Then one final file caught his eye: contract.pdf. He opened it. T was a hit order, $100,000 wired in Bitcoin, signed by a name Ethan did recognize, Trevor Sand, his wife's cousin, now CEO of the Foundation since her death. The target, Delilah Vassand underlined in red, prevent release of materials, neutralize if needed. Ethan staggered back from the screen. Trevor, the man who held Theo at Margot's funeral, who toasted to her legacy, who sat beside Ethan during strategy meetings. That man had tried to have Delilah killed and, worse, he knew. Everything had covered for Margot, had weaponized the foundation, had turned Theo's trauma into a shield. Ethan made a decision. He wasn't going to wait anymore. He wasn't going to sit in meetings while snakes played family. He picked up the phone, dialed a private number. Charlie, I need full security protocol, sweep my house, my company background check on Trevor Sand, and get my legal team prepped for corporate breach and attempted murder. His old friend on the line responded fast, got it. What's going down? Ethan stared at the hospital at the window where Delilah was resting. War. The next day, Ethan stood outside the Margot Hale Foundation headquarters. Media had gathered after an anonymous tip dropped video files to 5 major outlets. The footage from the campfire night, the financial documents, the hit contract, all of it. Now public. Trevor Sand was nowhere to be found. His office was locked, phone disconnected. Ethan stepped into the building like a storm wrapped in a suit. Employees turned, some looked away, some looked terrified. He walked straight to the receptionist, everyone in the boardroom. Now, no excuses. 20 minutes later he stood at the head of the long glass table, eyes blazing. You all built a lie around my wife's name. You exploited my grief. You protected someone who hurt my son. Silence. He threw the flash drive on the table. That ends today. One woman finally whispered, we didn't know what to do. She was dying. She said it was grief. She drugged a child. Ethan didn't shout. His voice dropped, and that made them listen harder. He continued, I'm dissolving the foundation. Effective immediately. Funds will be redirected to vetted trauma recovery centers, and every one of you will be investigated. Gasps. One man tried to speak. Mr. Hale, you can't just. I can, and I will. If any of you try to run, you'll answer to. Federal authorities have already handed everything over. He walked out without waiting for a reply. Outside, a black SUV pulled up. Inside it, Delilah sat awake, pale but alive. He slid in beside her. Hey, he said quietly. She gave him a weak smile. You released it. He nodded. You saved my son. You saved me. Now it's time I return the favor. She looked away. I didn't run because I had already failed once. That night at the retreat, I saw the signs, but I didn't stop Margot fast enough. I promised myself, if I ever got a second chance, I'd do it right. Ethan took a breath. Do you regret it? Liza's eyes filled. Every part of it hurt. But no, because I look at that boy, and I know he has a future. They stood there, the wind moving gently between the trees, and then Ethan asked, what had been building in him for weeks? Do you think there's room in your life for someone who's still figuring out how to forgive himself? She turned slowly. I think there's room for someone who already shows up every day, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. He stepped closer. I'm not the man I was 6 months ago. I don't even want to be, but I'd like to be the man you deserve, and the one Theo can count on. Delilah reached for his hand. Then don't be anyone else. They walked back toward the cabin together, side by side. No labels, no rushing, just something real. Theo was inside, drawing at the kitchen table. He had started a scrapbook. One page held a photo of Ethan holding him at the press conference. Another showed Delilah holding his hand during their first trip to the zoo. At the top of the page in bold letters he had written, my real family. Ethan paused in the doorway, his eyes wet. Later that evening, as they all sat by the fireplace, Theo looked up. Daddy. Yeah, buddy. Why did Mummy lie? Ethan paused, then set down his book. He looked Theo in the eyes because she was scared and hurt. And sometimes people who are hurt make choices that cause more hurt. But she did love you in her own way, even if she didn't know how to show it. Right? Theo nodded. Slowly. Was she sick in her head? Maybe, but I think mostly she was just lost. Theo looked at Delilah. Is it okay to still miss her a little? Delilah smiled. It's more than okay. It means your heart still works. Ethan reached out, pulled his son into his lap. And your heart is the bravest I've ever seen. They sat like that for a long time. No more secrets, no more shadows, just firelight and family. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. It was from the federal prosecutor. Daniel Morrow had accepted a plea deal, life in prison without parole, in exchange for full cooperation in dismantling the illegal research network. He held the letter in one hand, then burned it in the fireplace. He didn't need revenge. He had already won. 1 year later, Delilah stood at the opening ceremony of Theo's Light. The new trauma center was built near the retreat grounds, where it all began. Ethan stood beside her, His hand wrapped around hers. Theo ran up ahead to cut the ribbon with a group of other children who had been through their own battles. The sign above the door read, "You are not your past, you are loved." Ethan gave a short speech, his voice strong, steady. A child's heart is not meant to carry the weight of adult pain, but when they're forced to, they deserve more than survival. They deserve healing, joy, and protection. That's what this place is for, and that's what we promise to fight for every day. The crowd applauded. Delilah's eyes shimmered with tears, and Theo beamed like sunlight. Later that night, the three of them sat under a sky filled with stars. Theo pointed up. "Do you think Mummy can see us from up there?" Ethan looked up. "I don't know, but if she can, I think she sees how strong you are." Theo leaned against him. "Do you think she's proud?" Delilah answered, "I think she would be, and I think she'd be grateful we're taking care of each other." They stayed like that, wrapped in blankets, watching the sky, no longer haunted, no longer afraid, just living, loving, and beginning again. The end.